Here we are, Tilly, Fred whispered, gently squeezing his daughter's tiny hand as her footsteps echoed through the cold, dry morning, thick with the scent of dampness. The sky hung heavy with gray clouds pressing down on the city, dimming even the daylight, as though the world had forgotten how to breathe. Matilda yawned, still half asleep, eyes clouded with dreams and quiet defiance. Her small legs dragged along the pavement as if weighed down with lead, and her pale, delicate face carried the wistful shadow of a child's reluctance, the kind born not from rebellion, but from being forced to obey the unspoken rules of the grown-up world. "Daddy, I don't want to go," she murmured, her voice soft and drowsy. Fred knelt to meet her eyes, cupping her cheeks in his warm hands and resting his forehead against hers, as if to share with her a fraction of the steadiness he barely possessed himself. His voice was low, tender, wrapped in that quiet certainty only a father's love can hold, the kind that soothes even what words can't explain. "You know what we agreed on, sweetheart. School first, then your favorite treat. I promised you, remember? After class, we'll go for ice cream." Matilda lowered her gaze, her little brows knitting into a thin, stubborn line. "But, Daddy," she whispered, the trace of sadness in her voice far too heavy for such a small being. Fred felt something shift in his chest, as though her words had reached into him and tugged at the center of everything. She pulled him close, arms wrapping tight around his neck, her whole tiny body clinging to him as if she could hold him forever. "I missed you, Daddy. Don't leave again." Her words cut straight through him, leaving behind the bitter taste of guilt and helpless love. "I won't, sweetheart," he whispered, though even he could hear the weight beneath the softness. Her hands tightened around his neck, as though she were trying to make sure the world itself couldn't take him away again. "Do you promise?" she asked, her eyes searching his for a truth that might steady her own trembling faith. "I promise, my love." He smiled, but it barely reached his eyes, a fragile mask over the heaviness he carried within. He stayed there for a moment after she disappeared inside, watching through the glass as she took her seat beside her friends, those small anchors that kept her steady in his absence. Gratitude flickered through him, but so did the sharp ache of knowing that time, once lost, never returns. He stood motionless, the quiet pressing around him like confession, and for the briefest moment, he let the truth settle, that recovery was not a finish line, but a long, uneven road he had only just begun to walk. When he finally turned away, the street had begun to stir, the sound of distant engines, hurried footsteps, the slow pulse of a waking city. He glanced at his watch, showing nearly 8. Without thinking, her name rose to the surface. Anya. The thought of her came as naturally as breath. Perhaps she had already dropped Kai off at school, he wondered, and the notion filled him with that familiar, aching quiet. He missed her more than he wanted to admit, more than was safe to allow. He slipped into his dark blue Audi, closed the door, and let the engine hum to life. The drive was slow and deliberate, but inside him, it wasn't. His mind raced ahead, restless, his fingers finding the phone almost on their own. 1 ring, 2, 3, 4. Then a voice, warm and known, answered on the 5th ring. "Fred, good morning." That sound alone undid him. For a heartbeat, the air eased. "Anya." "Good morning. I hope I didn't wake you." Her tone carried that gentle freshness he remembered. She was smiling. He could hear it. She told him she'd just dropped Kai off and was heading back to the bookstore, worrying aloud that the place might already be swallowed by cobwebs and dust. He laughed softly. "That place doesn't know how to breathe without you. Nor I without it," she replied, her voice like the quiet rustle of old paper, alive again. They fell into that kind of silence that doesn't need to be filled. When he asked how she'd slept, she admitted she hadn't, that dreams had lingered too long, pulling her under and letting her go only with effort. He said he understood, and he did. When she asked about Matilda, he told her the truth, that she was quiet, distant, like a child who hadn't yet found her way back from a long absence. Anya's voice softened with regret. She said she felt as if she'd taken him from his daughter, that it had never been her intention. He told her she hadn't, that Matilda just needed time, and that he'd promised her ice cream after school. "That's good," she said. "She needs more tenderness. I'm sorry." "You don't need to apologize," he murmured, his words calm, forgiving. As they spoke, Anya unlocked the bookstore door. The hinges groaned, and the wind rushed in, carrying with it the scent of rain and the dust of unread pages. "I'll suffocate if I don't let a little air in," she said quietly. Then leave the door open, came his answer, softer than the hum of the engine. I already have. He smiled faintly, that kind of smile one gives when there's nothing left to hide behind. He told her he had a hospital checkup later, that he was tired of it all, that it felt endless. She told him he had to go. He said he knew. Let me know how it goes, she asked. Of course I won't. Her laughter, light and sudden, spilled through the line and warmed the silence between them. God, Fred, fine. Then don't. He smiled again, quietly. I'll be heading to the station afterward. Reports, contracts, the usual. You'll be busy today. Yes, he said, but I'm glad we're talking. Somehow, it feels good. I miss you. The words lingered between them, heavy yet tender, the kind that exist only between two people who've already survived too much to pretend anymore. And I miss you too, Freddie, she whispered, her voice barely more than breath, fragile and true. For a moment, there was only silence. Then came the faintest sound behind her, footsteps she almost didn't believe were real. When she turned, her breath caught. Fred stood at the doorway, real and warm, leaning against the frame with that quiet, knowing smile that could undo her completely. His shirt was simple, blue, his jeans worn, and yet on him, they looked like something more, like a memory she wanted to keep forever. Her gaze traced the line of his arms, the strength in his hands, the shape of his hips, the familiar heat of his mouth. Her lips parted without thought, as if trying to draw him closer, to breathe him in, to take him in entirely, atom by atom, until nothing existed outside of this moment, and him within it. Fred stepped forward without hesitation, cradling her face in his hands and pressing his lips to hers before she could even lower the phone. The moment their mouths met, her heart trembled, and the carefully constructed walls of her inner world, built from silence and self-control, crumbled under the force of his presence. Every dormant piece of her stirred to life. Every fragment that had drifted toward disappearance in his absence awakened. He was the air she had been missing, necessary, inevitable. I like it when you call me Freddie, he murmured, fingers tracing the line of his jaw, memorizing the familiar contours of her face. But I like it even more when I hear it like this, in person, because a phone can never carry what your eyes speak. Her lips curved into a smile she could not suppress, even as a shiver ran through her. Should I get used to you just appearing out of nowhere? She asked, trying to mask with humor how deeply his sudden arrival had shaken her defenses. I was just passing through, he said, winking. His ease, that effortless nonchalance, disarmed her completely. Just passing through, she repeated, avoiding his gaze. Her eyes drifted to his mouth, then back up to his face, and that alone was enough to draw her toward him again. This time, the kiss was deeper, quieter, as though it carried both the past and the future in the same breath. I was, he whispered against her lips, and I couldn't pass by without tasting you, without feeling you. Her cheeks flamed, a heat betraying what she had tried to keep secret. God, Freddie, she murmured, heart fluttering like a book of pages only he could read. I have to go, you know. I'll be late, he said, yet he remained still, as if even his words could not convince him. So you came just to muddle my thoughts and leave? She asked, clutching his hand, as if her touch alone could keep him there. Sounds like a very good plan, she added, still holding him. But you're still holding me. Make me let go. I don't want to. Then I'm not going. Her laughter melted into a hug, arms wound around his neck. She pressed herself against him so completely that every inch of her body absorbed his warmth. She was smaller, so he had to bend to kiss her. But when he held her, it felt as though every part of her fit perfectly against him. His fingers ran through her hair, a gesture repeated so often it had become second nature, almost a ritual. He hadn't noticed when it began. Perhaps it was his way of proving that he and Anya were real, that this was not a dream or illusion. Perhaps it was simply that he loved to touch her, to claim each piece of her, without reason or explanation. He kissed her wherever he could, softly on the temples, casually on the cheek, lingering on the lips. He loved this woman wholly, without reserve, as one loves after sorrow, with the entirety of one's being. And she, quietly and gently, was shaping him in return, like water patiently molding stone. With one soft parting of lips, Fred pulled back, though his entire body remained turned toward her, a shadow of unspoken longing. He stepped back, but did not leave completely. You've already distracted me enough, Anya. You always have this effect, he said, a smile mingling with desire in his voice. "I regret nothing at all," she replied, satisfied, seating herself at her desk and gesturing toward the door, though she did not want to actually watch him leave. "But the door is over there." "I didn't know," he joked, retreating lazily, step by step. "It was wonderful to taste your lips this morning. I should accidentally drive by here more often." She adjusted her glasses, studying him again through the glass that made him sharper, more real. "I wouldn't mind if you passed by more often. Maybe I really need to get used to it." "Maybe you do," he said quietly, offering more than a simple suggestion. She blew him a playful kiss with 2 fingers, childlike and charming, leaving him to disappear through the door. The smile lingered on her face, etched deep beneath the surface, like the memory of his fingers on her skin. He was the reason her soul fluttered, the reason butterflies danced in her stomach, like notes of a quiet, gentle song. She lowered her bag beneath the desk and surveyed the chaos of papers, mostly pulled from the mailbox, addressed either to her or to the bookstore. She knew if she did not sort them immediately, daily life would swallow them, leaving them scattered longer than she wished. Lost in this task, she did not notice the soft footsteps that paused behind her, almost inaudible. Only when she felt the subtle shift in the air, the vibration of his presence, did she look up. Fred stood there again, a smile that knew too much and said too little, playing on his lips. "Can I help you?" she asked formally, adopting the distance one reserves for customers. "You know," he replied, voice teasing, "I find it amusing to talk to you while you're at work." She removed her glasses, resting her hands on the desk and meeting his gaze. "Oh? And why, pray tell? Because then you treat me like a random passerby or a colleague, instead of your devilishly handsome man," Fred Stevenson said, lowering himself into the chair opposite her, a look that could disarm the hardest heart. Her lips curved into a faint, unmistakable smile. "I see you couldn't last more than 2 minutes without me." "Not even 2 minutes," he admitted, laughing softly. "Slowly getting used to it, are you?" "Maybe I am," she said lightly, but her eyes betrayed no playfulness. Fred nodded, leaning over the desk to press a quiet kiss to her forehead. "Just don't make me leave," he whispered, and she laughed. "So what did you really want, Freddie? Or did you just come to check if I'm still here, chasing your kisses?" "Oh, actually, I had a hidden motive for this little second intrusion." From his pocket, he produced a carefully folded piece of paper, worn but preserved. Anya took it, sliding her glasses back on, studying the unmistakably imperfect, childlike handwriting for several seconds. When she raised her eyebrows and looked at him, a smile was already playing at the corners of her lips. "What is this?" she asked. Fred only smiled, obviously proud of his idea. On it, he had written, with the confidence that always marked him, "Could Miss Anya Woodberg spare an hour this week so that her beloved Fred Stevenson might take her out to dinner? Children optional." Her eyes scanned the lines of his handwriting, and she knew instantly that it was him, completely, utterly, his way of teasing, of courting, of loving. She nodded, laughing softly, murmuring, "Get out of here." Fred's grin widened, and he rose with the slow, effortless ease of a man aware that he had left an indelible mark behind, as though the warmth of his presence would linger long after him. "Send me a message," he said, vanishing once more through the door, leaving her alone among the stack of papers, her thoughts entwined in her chest, and a trace of his scent drifting through the room, like an invisible shadow of his presence. She tried to return to work, but her focus could not settle on the papers before her. 2 competing forces pulled at her attention. First, the desire to go out with him, to give him the time he had asked for, and second, the urge to include the children, to merge their worlds. Yet in that same thought lay Matilda, her fragile trust only just beginning to form, and a subtle fear stirred in her chest. How would the little girl withstand such a meeting? In this struggle between desire and apprehension, her gaze fell on the paper Fred had left. Her fingers traced over the letters, as if touching not just the paper, but the thought itself, the breath of his presence translated into ink. She laughed aloud, remembering how this note so irresistibly resembled a childhood slip of paper, the one a 5th-grade boy slips into a girl's hands. Yes, no, maybe. In that moment, she realized that Fred, in his grown-up seriousness and strength, was simultaneously irresistibly charming, boyishly imperfect, and that was exactly what made him conquer hearts. He was that yes that could never be written in pencil on paper, but etched straight into the heart. Carefully, she folded the note and placed it in a drawer, a small secret reminder of everything that made her love him, when her phone rang. Without thinking, almost instinctively, she grabbed the receiver, stubbornly and unrealistically hoping it was him again. Her heart skipped a beat, but the screen displayed an unknown number.
Still, she pressed the icon and lifted the phone, pressing it between shoulder and ear, as though the physical contact could give her the security she needed for what was to come. "Hello?" she said softly. "Just get out of my head, for God's sake." The voice on the other end was sharp, almost panicked, cutting through her breath and making her fingers tighten around the phone as if she might otherwise drop it. The voice was familiar, far too familiar, too close. Oh no, God. I hope I just said that to myself. James's tone turned into a whisper, an uncertain prayer to the universe, as if hoping the moment would vanish, erased entirely. He closed his eyes, and when he opened them, the phone was still there, the silence on the other end heavy, dense, thrumming with a pulse threatening to explode. "Anya?" he said, as if speaking to a ghost from the past. "James?" Her voice was fragile, laced with disbelief. "Sorry, I shouldn't have called. This is a mistake." She didn't answer, but her uneven, uncertain breathing spoke everything words could not bear. On the other end, he listened to that silence like someone who knew every map of her breath. His hand trembled above the screen, wanting to hang up, yet his finger refused to obey, as if his heart had taken command. "You thought of me?" she asked finally, her voice thin as a thread, almost imperceptible, yet enough to slice through the air. "No, of course not," he replied too quickly, too abruptly, already feeling the lie etching itself across his face. He did not need her to see it. He knew she would not trust him. "But you did," she said, with quiet certainty, as if she read between the lines what he had never been able to hide. "Fine, yes, I thought of you," he burst out, frustration cutting each word, his voice fragile, vulnerable, and angry all at once, "and I am not even remotely comfortable with it." She laughed, but it was not a laugh of joy. It was a bitter echo, a mocking, short, mechanical gesture of self-defense. She slumped into her chair, eyes fixed on nothing, while he on the other side sighed loudly, wounded, like a man exposed completely. "It's not funny, Anya." "I know," she whispered, rubbing her temples, trying to dispel the tension that gripped her head. "Sorry. It's just, all of this is so sudden. I don't want to think about you. I don't want you in my thoughts." "Sorry?" she said awkwardly, more from instinct than convention. "We shouldn't even be talking. I just want you gone from them," he said softly. But the weight remained, like a stone lodged in his chest. "It's not as if I sneak in at night and whisper that you dream of me." "Don't you?" he whispered, and the words hung in the air, dangerously close. "James, pull yourself together. Maybe your thoughts are just telling you your place is with my sister. You can control your mind. But I'm trying to be happy with her. I don't understand." "Neither do I, James. I'm just trying to help." "You're not helping. What then do you want me to do?" "Maybe the days we spent close together linger inside you. They're tearing me apart. This is the most bizarre conversation I've ever had." He laughed, tiredly, through the frustration, joyless. "Like I said, I want you out of my head. I don't know how to do that. Maybe now that we've talked, maybe I can move on," he said, with a note of uncertain hope, like a man trying to convince himself the doors of the past were closed. And yet, why did he love the way she said his name so much? Why did it sound like a song he could listen to forever? "Maybe," she said softly, though she didn't entirely believe it herself. "Now I can move on. Good luck with that. I hope you really are happy with Elizabeth." "I am. I will be." The line went dead, severed, and he was gone, leaving her alone with the phone's black screen and thoughts that refused to retreat. Her gaze remained fixed, and the silence of the bookstore suddenly felt deafening. She shook her head, sinking deeper into the chair, trying to gather her thoughts. Her hands were icy, wrists stiff, and the room seemed cold and bare. She stood, closed the door, turned on the heating, and inhaled deeply, as if searching for a new anchor in the air itself. She hoped James would not call again. She did not want to repeat the conversation, nor to become a complication in his life once more. The very thought of Fred finding out about the call stirred an uneasy anxiety in her, for she knew it would disturb him. The whole exchange, she realized, was not worth the drama. She picked up the phone again, finger hovering over his number, tempted to block him, but changed her mind, pushing it aside as though discarding the chaos from her own thoughts, like crumpled paper tossed to the side. She sat back in the leather chair, gathered the stack of papers before her, and forced herself to return to work. After all, the job would not complete itself, and she had to find a rhythm, even as her heart still quivered from the voice of the past.
Every step he took toward her made her grip the book even tighter in her hands, as if it were the only shield protecting her from the impatience gnawing at her from within. She silently thanked herself for having planned it because, without the pages under her fingers, she might have already succumbed to the impulse to reach for him, to grab him by the collar and pull him close, regardless of the stairs around them. Yet, when he stopped in front of her, only a few steps away, so close that she could count his eyelashes and smell the scent of his skin, her grip relaxed, though the resistance struggling against desire remained. She tilted her head imperceptibly, watching him as if seeking a sign, while he, instead, followed the passers-by filling the store with his gaze, offering them not a shred of privacy. It was the last hour before the store's afternoon break, the time when people escape their obligations to snatch a book that called to them from the window. The bookstore buzzed with chatter and restlessness, making any thought of intimacy almost absurd. And yet, in such moments, on certain afternoons, when day and night merged into the skin and the mind, she would stop caring for reason and rules. She approached the register, and while he waited patiently, she sold books to a pair of teenagers, packed them into a thin paper bag, and guided them to the door, where she then lowered the close sign. The moment she returned, Fred was on the edge of impatience, yet he stood calmly, allowing her to make the first move. And when she approached him, wordless, arms outstretched, he did what he had wanted from the very moment he had seen her. He drew her to him, firmly and securely, with a warmth that felt like a promise that here existed a world where she could breathe. Anya closed her eyes in that embrace, the rare kind that allowed her to lower every shield, because he knew how to hold her, not too tightly, yet enough to reassure her that she did not need to struggle. He, in turn, felt the curves of her body, her scent, the way her form aligned with his, as if they were designed to fit together. When they parted, they lingered for a moment, leaning into each other, like two people unsure whether to move on or remain there forever. But he could not resist. His lips descended abruptly onto hers, and in the instant she felt him, a soft, satisfied squeak escaped her, her lips parting in surrender to his craving. His tongue found hers, and they melded together in breath, and she was already lost, pushed back by the force of him seeking anchorage. Her back struck a bookshelf, and several books tumbled to the floor, but Fred immediately pulled back instinctively, wanting to check that she was okay. Her eyes remained closed, her breathing quickened, and on her face was no trace of fear, only the hint of surrender. When she opened her eyes, she looked at him as one might look for the only source of light in the darkness, and in the next instant, pulled him closer, eager to continue what had just begun. "We can't ignore how we feel about each other," he said, breathless, his voice laced with both passion and desperation. "You pull me like a magnet, and I'm just iron that cannot resist. I cling to you, Anya. This force between us, I cannot deny it. The mere thought that you love me, that I matter to you, lifts me like nothing else. You are my serotonin. You are the reason I smile." His words, sudden and sincere, fell on her like rain on thirsty soil, and she listened with such tenderness in her eyes that, if he could see himself reflected there, he would witness himself in the best light he'd ever known. "You're wonderful," she said softly, then kissed him again, this time gentler, with that light touch that spoke louder than 100 words. "But I need to pick up Kai soon. I don't like her waiting alone outside the school." Fred nodded, as one who understands that time is rarely an ally to love, yet hopes it might work in their favor. "When does school finish?" he asked. "Around 3, but I always arrive early. I don't like her being the last child waiting." "And Tilly?" Her question was casual, but carried weight, as though asking for more than just a schedule. "Same situation," he smiled, shrugging. "She has football practice today. She'll be exhausted, but I know her. She won't give up, just like me." Anya smiled, finding in that persistence something that connected them. Kai, too. Mondays are always a little battle. Everything collapses into one day, and we just try to keep the rhythm. He paused, eyes holding a thought he had long carried, and now wanted to share. "I have a suggestion," he said, his voice warm but tense, as if knowing that these words might shift the course of their day. "What would you say to us picking up our girls from school together? I can drive. We'd be together. It would feel natural." She looked at him, her smile spreading like light through glass. She stepped closer, wrapping her arms around his waist, affirming with touch what words had not yet managed to say. "That sounds wonderful. So natural, and yet strange, because we've never done it before." He kissed her gently, carefully, as if kissing something precious. "Do you think the girls would like it?" "I don't know," she replied, eyebrows raised, a mix of worry and hope in her expression. "Lately, they've been seeking each other out. They're starting to discover one another." "But, Fred, what about your promise to Matilda? Your day?" He shrugged, a childlike glimmer of hope revealing that he was thinking of compromise. Maybe we could all go together? Anya shook her head gently, without judgment, with understanding stronger than desire. It wouldn't be fair to her. Today she wants you all to herself, and for good reason. And I don't ever want her to feel like I'm taking her dad away. That's what hurts the most. He pulled her closer without a word, then whispered softly, "You are the most wonderful woman I know." She lifted her chin slightly, smiling, and looked him straight in the eyes. "Then here's the plan. We'll pick them up together, in your car, but you'll drop us at the bookstore. Then you continue your day with Matilda, as planned. Ice cream, a walk, a chat, everything that belongs to you two. That's fair." As their words mingled with the soft murmur of the nearly empty bookstore and the scent of books scattered around them, both of them knew that within these small agreements, in these gestures of consideration, lay the foundation of something far greater. For a moment, Fred's eyes sparkled, as if a spark had ignited within them, defying all shadows. "You're still the most wonderful woman I know," he repeated, his words soft like a sigh, carrying the weight of a truth he could no longer keep inside. His lips brushed hers in a quiet, gentle kiss, cautious, as if in that touch he were trying to steady the fragile balance of their world. Then came the silence, the dense, heavy, precious silence in which two people stand entwined, leaning on each other like pillars that mutually support one another, where every thought sounded louder than it ought to. "By the way, Matilda's birthday is coming up," he finally said, breaking the silence with words that, though simple, carried an undercurrent of unease. "And I have no idea what to do for her. Everything seems either too much or too little." Anya raised an eyebrow, curiosity lighting her face with a gentle smile that could awaken warmth even in the darkest moments. "Really? Because Kai's birthday is approaching too." Fred froze, his gaze suddenly cautious, as if he had unexpectedly glimpsed the outlines of a labyrinth where he had expected an open path. "Seriously?" he said, his voice tinged with a tension that did not belong to everyday conversation. "May 13th, she said quietly but firmly, this time looking not through him, as she sometimes did, but straight at him, as if her eyes were the key trying to unlock a sealed chamber within his heart. Fred stiffened. He blinked several times, and his usually bright gaze darkened, colored by something deeper, more distant. "Kai's birthday is May 13th, he repeated, more to himself than to her, as if speaking the words might contain the sudden whirl of thoughts. Anya nodded briefly, not averting her eyes from his face, and only then did he, quietly, almost inaudibly, as though afraid of his own realization, say, "That's also Matilda's birthday." The moment stretched, becoming tangible, thick as air before a storm. Anya opened her mouth, but words stuck in her throat. Only after a long heartbeat did she whisper, almost a murmur, that Matilda and Kai shared a birthday. Her hand trembled as her fingers absent-mindedly ran through her long hair, seeking some anchor in that mechanical motion. "Yes," he confirmed. Then, without further explanation, stepped closer and wrapped his arms around her waist, resting his forehead against hers, like a man seeking refuge in the proximity of another being. "Looks like we have double the reason to celebrate on May 13th. "Looks like it," she said softly, voice breaking with emotion, her heart fluttering in her chest, as if it were trying to leap out of its own prison. She rose on her tiptoes and kissed him, gently and carefully, as if to quiet the chaos threatening to erupt within her. Feeling the warmth of his lips, she repeated the kiss once more, then again, short and quiet, until his smile mirrored hers, merging them in a moment both serene and whirlwind at the same time. "You're wonderful," she whispered, as if speaking to draw him closer, to anchor him in a moment that threatened to slip away. Fred held his gaze on her longer than ever before. His eyes, usually light and bright, were now shadows, opening into an unknown room, one he had kept locked for years, without a key, without the courage to illuminate it again. Anya stayed in his embrace, and in that closeness felt a shift. His breathing deepened, slowed, heavy, as if his body knew something before his mind, as if it recalled a truth he was still trying to suppress. "Fred?" she asked softly, tightening her arms around his neck, refusing to let him slip away. "What exactly surprised you so much?" He shook his head, as if trying to chase away the thoughts swarming in him like black birds on the horizon before a storm. "Nothing, just coincidence," he murmured, though even in the sound of his voice, it was clear he did not believe his own words. Anya did not let go. Words were unnecessary. The tension in his muscles under her palms was answer enough. She knew the feeling. He wasn't lying, but he wasn't telling everything. "You know," she began softly,
her voice gentle, carrying no accusation, only the unwavering desire to see the truth. "You never mentioned before that Matilda was born on May 13th. His gaze dropped to her, and in his eyes was something heavy, deep, something still unable to take shape in words. "I never thought it mattered. At least, not until now." "And now it seems important?" she asked slowly, as someone who knows that truth must be awaited with patience, not demanded abruptly. "Now it feels like something I cannot ignore," he admitted softly, his voice carrying a trace of uncertainty older than himself. Anya laid her hand on his cheek, looking at him with quiet insistence that demanded no answers, only acknowledgement. Maybe there's something we haven't even tried to understand. Maybe this date isn't a coincidence." Her body trembled, not with fear, but with the premonition that something stood before them that transcended mere chance, something powerful enough to reshape their lives. As if fate, weary of silence, had finally chosen to speak. Fred rested his forehead against hers. "You know," he murmured, voice muted, almost inaudible. "There are moments when it feels to me that none of this is a coincidence. Not you, not Kai, not Matilda, not this day." Anya closed her eyes, leaning into him, and for the first time, truly felt the ground beneath her shift, because something new was trying to grow from the silence in which they had lived until now. Then her phone rang on the shelf by the door, a short, familiar alert. The moment hanging in the air slowly dissipated. Anya reluctantly separated from him, reached for her phone, and read the message. "It's time. Kai finishes in 15 minutes." Fred nodded, yet his gaze remained fixed on her, as if he wanted to hold the thread that had just begun to unravel. "Shall we go together?" she asked softly. "Of course," he replied almost in a whisper. "Let's go get our girls." In his voice, the word "our" sounded different for the first time, not as a mere claim, but as recognition, a step toward a truth they had not yet fully understood, yet were ready to discover together.